Chapter 1, Baja Drift. The sun dipped low over the Sea of Cortez, turning everything molten. Waves lapped against the rocks below Opal's parked U-Haul box truck, their rhythm slower than breath. The air smelled like salt and wood smoke. Inside the truck, beads and wires and stones glittered in organized chaos. Her mobile studio wrapped in a faded quilt of postcards, maps, and the occasional pressed flower taped to the walls. It looked like a shrine to every place she'd ever been. Opal, 24, wild-hearted and sun-kissed, sat on the roof with a half-finished book in one hand and a mango in the other. 4 months in Baja had given her exactly what she'd known she'd needed: space. Space to think, space to make, space to float. She'd swum with fish, shared beach bonfires with strangers who felt like old friends, and crafted jewelry with her feet in the sand. It was the kind of living that rewired your insides. And yet, something in her buzzed with the feeling that this season had run its course. She closed the book, a battered paperback on Creative Flow, and stretched out like a cat, her long blonde dreads fanning across the rooftop. The U-Haul creaked beneath her, settling with the warmth of the day. The truck had once hauled mattresses and moving boxes through cities, but now it was hers, a scrappy, stubborn cocoon of plywood walls, solar panels, and freedom. Time to roll soon, she murmured. There was no one to answer, just the sky, slowly catching fire. That night, she cooked rice and beans over her little camp stove and sat barefoot on the tailgate, sorting moonstones into piles. The good ones for necklaces, the flawed ones were those were her favorite for rings. Each piece told its own story, and Opal never forced them to match. She clicked off a podcast that had been playing in the background. It was another interview with some successful artist who'd scaled their business, hired assistants, and sold at high-end galleries. Not my thing, she muttered. But the truth was, some days it sounded like a dream. Not the assistants, but the not having to grind part. The idea of building something once that could support her even when her hands weren't twisting wire. She flicked a bug off her shoulder. Am I allowed to want more? She asked the moon. A week later, the U-Haul rolled north, rattling and humming like it had opinions. The drive from Baja toward Quartzsite was familiar. Sand and cactus and lonely gas stations. Opal sang with the windows down, devoured audiobooks about pricing strategy and money mindset, and kept a notebook on the dash to scribble thoughts like, how much is freedom really worth? Why do we think starving artist equals authentic? Is it greedy to want ease? The road gave her time to untangle questions she'd stuffed deep. Her jewelry was good. People said so. She had repeat customers and online fans, but it barely paid for gas and groceries, let alone the flights to Thailand that she dreamed about. She wanted to see the world, all of it, not just what her U-Haul could drive to. Quartzsite, Arizona would be her pause point. She could sell some pieces, hug her desert friends, and maybe sit under a sky full of stars while eating something greasy and perfect. Willow would be there. Her people. But Opal was beginning to wonder if she was still the same version of herself that had left them 4 months ago. When she pulled into the crowded RV encampment at Quartzsite's edge, dust spiraled in the air like ghosts. Familiar shapes appeared: buses, trailers, campers with painted doors, and hanging tapestries. It was a village of nomads, sun chasers, anti-capitalists, artists. Home. Willow waved from the fire pit, her hair in a wild nest of dyed copper dreadlocks. A grin split her face. You brought my favorite U-Haul back, she shouted. Opal parked and jumped down, enveloped in a hug that smelled like patchouli and campfire smoke. You look different, Willow said, holding her at arm's length. Better or worse? More. Shiny. What have you been up to? Opal smiled, but didn't answer. Not yet. Chapter 2. The Quartzsite Mirror. The morning air in Quartzsite tasted like dust and strong coffee. Sunlight flittered through the sky, stretched thin and cloudless, painting everything in pale gold. The place buzzed with energy, makeshift tents, RVs with hand-lettered signs, buckets full of polished stones, tables of hand-carved spoons, crystals, hats, knives, and jewelry. So much jewelry. Opal's U-Haul booth was in its usual spot, between a man who sold desert sage bundles and a woman who made turquoise mosaic mirrors shaped like lizards. She'd backed in, propped open the swing-out doors, and hung her tapestries to soften the glare. Her setup was simple but intentional. Old cigar boxes lined with velvet, driftwood display stands, and a sign that read, handmade jewelry, Baja to the backroads, sliding scale friendly. Customers trickled through, tourists in cargo shorts, retirees in sun visors, sunburned van lifers, and husky pups. They touched her pieces, tried things on, smiled. A few bought. Most didn't. She smiled anyway. It was a good day, but her eyes kept drifting past the rows of stalls towards something she couldn't quite name. Around noon, Willow appeared with a paper tray of tacos. Bribe for watching your booth, she said, mouth already full. Opal laughed. Sold. She ducked away for a break, weaving through the market crowd. It was an unspoken rule in Quartzsite. Support each other, barter when you could, and always watch your friend's booth when they needed to pee or wander. She passed a vendor selling wire-wrapped quartz pendants, another with macrame belts and belts made out of old seat belts. She rounded the corner and stopped. A booth caught her eye. It was stunning in a way that was hard to explain. Everything was black velvet and burnished wood. The jewelry sparkled with intention. Raw diamonds, deep-cut garnets, moonstone that glowed like bottled fog. Each piece looked deliberate, elegant, and expensive. Her eyes darted to the price tags. $240, $310, $425. Her heart skipped. They weren't just selling, they were thriving. Customers lingered, asked questions. One woman handed over a credit card without even blinking. Opal stepped closer. The work wasn't flashy. It was soulful, familiar even. The bones of it weren't far from her own pieces, but the metals were finer, the designs more refined, the vibe, high-end boho meets heirloom. She stood there, stock still as 100 thoughts sprinted through her mind. Why not me? Why couldn't I charge this? What if I'd been lowballing my art just to be liked? The woman behind the booth caught her eye and smiled. A calm, confident nod. Opal smiled back, but something inside her cracked. She spun on her heel and walked fast. Too fast, back to her truck. Willow was lounging in a camp chair, feet propped up, a half-finished friendship bracelet dangling from her fingers. "How are the tacos?" she asked. "Good," Opal mumbled, grabbing a notebook from inside the truck. Willow raised a brow. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just saw something interesting." Opal flipped open the notebook and started scribbling furiously. Higher quality stones, real silver, gold fill, custom display trays, story cards for each piece. Raise prices slowly? Her hand flew. Ideas poured out like water breaking through a dam. "I'm going to try something," she said aloud, almost to herself. Willow squinted. "Try what?" Opal looked up. "Leveling up. Making fewer pieces but with better materials. Maybe offering higher-end collections, charging what it's worth." Willow let out a dry laugh. "What, like you're going fancy now?" Opal blinked. "Not fancy, just fair, intentional." Willow snorted. "Sounds like you want to be one of them." The word stung more than Opal expected. She didn't respond. Willow shrugged. "Whatever, do what you want. Just don't forget who you are." Opal turned her gaze out to the market stalls. "Maybe I'm just starting to remember." That night, the desert fell into its familiar hush. Stars bright enough to feel holy. Wind brushing the tents like a secret. They sat around the campfire, guitars strumming in the distance, mugs of cheap wine in their hands. Opal watched the sparks climb and vanish. "Do you ever think we confuse struggle with integrity?" she asked. Willow looked sideways. "No. I used to think I had to suffer to be real, that if I made money, it meant I sold out." "You do," Willow said sharply. "The system's rigged. You make too much, you become part of it." Opal's chest tightened. "But what if making more just means I can rest, travel further, create better? Why is thriving a betrayal?" Willow didn't answer. Her silence was heavy. Opal sipped her wine and let the firelight dance around her thoughts. She wasn't angry, just awake. For the first time in a long time, she could see the ceiling she'd built over her own head. And she was done pretending it was a skylight. Chapter 3, Campfire Clash. The next morning, the Quartzsite sun rose too early and too bright, but Opal didn't mind. She was already awake, kneeling inside the U-Haul box truck, sorting through her stash of supplies with new eyes. Her fingers hovered over each material with fresh discernment. Cheap chain, faded cord, tarnished clasps, all the things she once considered accessible now looked like anchors. She needed to make something else, something that felt like who she was becoming. By the time Willow shuffled up with a thermos of bitter instant coffee, Opal had half a dozen designs sketched and a list of upgraded materials to order: gem-grade moonstone, 14-karat gold wire, sterling silver ear hooks. "You look like you've been hit by lightning," Willow said, handing her the coffee. Opal smiled. "Maybe I have." They spent the day manning the booth, selling slowly, sharing snacks and stories, but underneath the surface, tension simmered. Every time Opal spoke about redesigning her work or ordering finer materials, Willow's eyes got flatter. By dusk, it was unavoidable. The fire crackled between them again, but this time it didn't feel like warmth. It felt like a line. "So let me get this straight," Willow said, spearing a marshmallow. "You're going to ditch what you've built, slap some silver on it, and sell to tourists who don't know better?" Opal blinked. "That's not what I said." "It's what you meant." "No, it's not. I'm not ditching anything. I'm evolving." Willow rolled her eyes. "You sound like a TED Talk." Opal took a breath. "Willow, I want to make better art, and I want to be paid fairly for it. Why is that such a threat?" "It's not a threat, just sad. You used to be one of us. Now you want to become Instagram girl with a jewelry line and a Shopify store?" "What if I do?" Opal said, her voice sharper than intended. Why is that bad? Willow leaned forward, eyes glowing with firelight and judgment. Because we're not them. We don't sell out. We make things for the people. Opal looked down at her hands, calloused and ink-stained, full of stories. I am the people. Willow didn't flinch. Not if you go down this road. Silence fell between them, thick and strange. Opal stared into the flames. She'd always loved Willow, her fierce fire, her loyalty, her belief in the underdog. But tonight, that fire felt brittle, guarded, like Willow was building walls while Opal was trying to build wings. I think, Opal said quietly, that not everyone is supposed to come with you when you grow. Willow laughed, but it wasn't kind. Right, you're growing. I'm just stuck. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Opal stood up, brushing dust from her skirt. The stars were out, indifferent and ancient. You know, she said, I always thought you were the brave one, but you're scared. Willow's jaw clenched. Opal took a step back. You're scared of change, scared of being seen. You want me to stay small so you don't have to look at your own stuckness. Go to hell, Willow whispered. Already been, Opal said, voice steady. Didn't like it. That's why I'm building something new. She walked back to the U-Haul with her heart thudding, the fire still warming the back of her neck. She climbed inside, shut the door gently, and sat cross-legged on the floor. It hurt. Of course it hurt, but it also made something inside her crystal clear. Willow had been a mirror once. Now she was a wall. And maybe not every vision belonged at the campfire. Opal opened her sketchbook, found a blank page, and wrote in block letters across the top, I'm allowed to want more. Then she started sketching again, this time with no one looking over her shoulder. Chapter 4, Northbound and New. The first 100 miles out of Quartzsite felt like detox. Opal kept the windows of her U-Haul box truck rolled down as the desert wind whipped her dreads and the ache of last night's campfire conversation rattled in her chest. She didn't regret the words, hers or Willow's, but they stuck like cactus thorns, irritating old parts of herself she hadn't fully outgrown. By the time she hit Flagstaff, the landscape had shifted to ponderosa pines and crisp air, and her soul began to exhale. Wisconsin was 2,000 miles ahead. Her mom had already texted back. Yes, she could ship supplies to the house. Yes, the local vendor show was still scheduled for the first Saturday in June. Yes, she could stay as long as she needed. Opal sipped lukewarm gas station coffee and stared at the road. She wasn't going back. She was going forward. Through. Every night, she parked somewhere quiet, a Forest Service road, a roadside picnic area, a hidden creek trail she'd found on a hiker's blog. Her box truck was cozy, cluttered, lined with shelves of books and bins of beads, with a makeshift hammock she'd hung across the back for reading or staring at the stars. Each evening, she unpacked a little tray of tools and tested designs, using the new ideas swirling in her head. Instead of wrapping copper around cheap agate, she imagined moonstone held in delicate gold fill, stamped with tiny words from poems she loved. She started dreaming up collections instead of one-offs, things with themes, storylines. She didn't know if they'd sell, but they felt like her, and that had to mean something. By the time she pulled into her mom's gravel driveway outside Minnequa, the birch trees were blooming, the yard was full of birdsong and dandelions, and the house, white clapboard, chipped but loved, smelled like bread and vanilla and something comforting that always made Opal want to take off her shoes and cry. Hey there, wild thing, her mom called from the porch, arms wide. Opal hugged her, buried her face in her shoulder, and exhaled months of sand and sun and firelight goodbyes. Inside, boxes waited, bubble mailers full of precious metals, semi-precious stones, polishing cloths, and display trays that didn't look like they'd been found in a junk pile. It felt indulgent. It felt right. That night, she stayed up until 2 a.m. in the garage, transforming it into a temporary studio. Her mom popped in once with tea and didn't say much, just smiled and shook her head. You're up to something, she said. Opal grinned. Always. Her hands trembled the first time she held the torch to the fine silver. It melted smoother than the base metal she was used to. It was softer, less forgiving, and more honest. The work demanded attention, precision, respect, just like she did now. She played with layering textures, soldering tiny charms, embedding birthstones, even etching snippets of poetry into the backs of pendants. Each piece took longer, but it felt like therapy, like devotion. Still, doubt lingered like smoke. Could she really sell these at triple the price? Or was she just dressing up a dream in nicer metal? The local vendor show came faster than expected. Opal set up her booth under a white tent near the lakefront. Her new displays were made from reclaimed wood and vintage linen. Each piece had a handwritten story card tucked beside it. Made on the road between Baja and Wisconsin, carried across deserts, forged with fire, worn with love. She wore a simple cotton dress and no shoes. Her box truck was parked nearby, just out of view. her past and future on wheels. The first few hours were slow. People browsed, smiled, nodded politely. Then a woman stopped, mid-50s, soft scarf, silver rings on every finger. She picked up a delicate necklace, a piece Opal had almost talked herself out of bringing. "This is different," the woman said, turning it over. "It feels like something someone gave you when they meant it." Opal's throat caught. The woman pulled out her wallet. "I'll take it." By the end of the day, Opal had made more in sales than she usually made in an entire week. But it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the look in people's eyes. They weren't just buying jewelry. They were buying a piece of her story, her evolution. And in that moment, standing barefoot in a tent beside a lake she'd swum in as a child, Opal realized something almost too big to say out loud. She wasn't trying to change the person she had become. She was building from it. Chapter 5. Small Town, Big Leap. The following Saturday, Opal returned to the same lakeside vendor market, this time with less fear and a table full of new work. The air buzzed with June energy, sticky sweet from cotton candy, the shriek of kids playing tag, the slow shuffle of retirees, and the occasional barefoot mom chasing a toddler with a juice box. Opal's booth, once an easygoing spread of boho charm, now gleamed with intentionality. Her price tags, bold, unapologetic, ranged from $65 to $180. The new pieces hung in tidy rows, cradled in soft linen trays. A little chalkboard sign read, "Not for everyone, but maybe for you." She still smiled at every browser, still complimented their earrings or their shoes or their energy, but this time her hands didn't fidget, her voice didn't explain. She stood like someone who believed in her own value. Still, that didn't mean the whispers didn't sting. "You used to be the affordable booth," someone said, brows raised at the $120 necklace. "Oh, wow, this is more than I expected," murmured a woman Opal vaguely remembered from high school. One man turned to his wife with a theatrical grimace and said, "We'd have to skip lunch if you want that." Opal smiled politely and let them go, but the heat crept up her neck anyway. Had she gone too far? Was Willow right? She swallowed the doubt with a sip of lemonade and forced herself to breathe. She didn't need everyone to get it. She just needed the right ones, too. That's when the woman in the long teal dress stopped. She had sandy curls, a camera around her neck, and the effortless air of someone who spent more time in art galleries than grocery stores. She didn't say much, just ran her fingers lightly over a set of stamped cuffs, then picked up a gold-filled necklace shaped like a desert bloom. "Did you make this?" she asked, her voice warm and curious. Opal nodded. "In a garage in Wisconsin, after 4 months in Baja, but it started in my head at a booth in Quartzsite." The woman smiled. "That's a journey." She turned over the story card, read it twice, then looked back at Opal with something sparkling behind her eyes. "I buy for a small chain of lifestyle boutiques. We highlight regional artists. Do you wholesale?" Opal's heart skipped. She blinked. "I haven't yet, but I can." The woman laughed. It was a smart answer. They exchanged cards. The woman walked away with 3 pieces and the promise of a follow-up email. Opal stood frozen for a moment, the breeze tugging at her dress, the lake glittering like a portal. That one order could change later. Back in the U-Haul, Opal collapsed into her hammock and stared at the ceiling. Still just plywood and thumbtacks, but tonight it shimmered like possibility. She thought of Willow, of the fire, of the way old versions of herself had clung to struggle like a badge of honor. But this new vision? She didn't need to prove her pain anymore. She could just create and earn and rest and travel somewhere planes went. She ran her fingers over a new sketch taped above her head, a cuff that wrapped around the wrist like a wave. Underneath it, she had written, "You don't have to stay in the box, even if you built it." Chapter 6. The Woman from the Lake. Opal was stringing beads in the back of the U-Haul, feet tucked beneath her, when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail, still half convinced the boutique buyer from last week had been a mirage, conjured by a vendor market sunstroke. But something in her gut told her to answer. "Opal?" the voice asked, warm and direct. "It's Marina, the woman you met by the lake last weekend. I haven't stopped thinking about your work." Opal's stomach did a full somersault. "Oh, hi," she said, her voice a little too high. Same here. I mean, not about myself, about you. Hi." Marina laughed softly. "Would you be open to a small test run? I'd like to carry 6 to 8 of your pieces in 3 of our locations, mostly lakeside and artisan neighborhoods. I'll send details, but it would be consignment to start, unless you'd prefer wholesale up front." Opal sat straighter, knocking over a tray of jump rings. "I can do either. I'm ready." Wonderful, Marina said. No pressure, though. Only if it feels aligned. Aligned. The word sat gently on Opal's chest, like a hand over a heartbeat. It does, she said. Completely. The next week blurred like watercolor. Opal spent hours hunched over her small bench in the garage, sanding, wrapping, soldering, polishing. She created tiny desert landscapes and pendants, bracelets stamped with words like soar, roots, wild. She tucked tiny handwritten notes into each jewelry box, like prayers folded into paper cranes. She mailed the box to Marina's address with shaky hands and a prayer whispered into the tape. Then she waited. 3 days later, a photo popped into her inbox. A display stand, her display stand, set up in a sun-drenched boutique window. The email read, "First two sold within 24 hours. Let's talk expansion." Opal blinked at the screen, her heart cracking open like a geode. She hadn't just shipped jewelry. She'd shipped a new version of herself. Her mom brought her celebratory root beer floats that night. "Because we're not champagne people, and this is still fancy," she said with a wink. They sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, fireflies blinking between the lilacs, and Opal felt herself settle. "Do you feel different?" her mom asked gently. Opal swirled her straw. "I feel like I finally caught up with myself." Her mom nodded. "And you don't have to become someone else to do it." "No," Opal said. "Just stop hiding the parts that wanted more." But the growth came with shadows too. An old friend from her Quartzsite crew messaged her after seeing a tag post from one of the boutiques. "Guess you're big time now. Hope you remember the rest of us." She stared at the words, the undercurrent, the barb hidden in the smile. She typed back, "Always will, but I'm not shrinking just to fit back in." Then deleted it, then typed it again. "I remember, I'm just walking a different road now." She hit send. Late that night, tucked into the back of her U-Haul with candles flickering and her sketchbook open, Opal thought about the ripple effect of one bold decision, about the woman by the lake, about how everything had changed with one moment of yes. The pieces weren't just selling, they were speaking. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't chasing freedom. She was living it. Chapter 7, The Old Van, The New Voice. Rain tapped gently on the U-Haul's metal roof like a rhythm Opal hadn't heard in months. It smelled like wet pine needles and rusted earth, and the steady sound of it was both comforting and haunting. She sat inside, knees pulled to her chest, surrounded by trays of stones and half-packed orders, wondering if the walls around her could still contain who she was becoming. The box truck hadn't changed. Same shelves held together with salvaged brackets, same windows cut with a jigsaw and framed in driftwood, same mattress on a wood pallet, the same curtain she dyed with beet juice in Arizona. Her studio home had always been her pride, her protest, her possibility. But now, for the first time, it felt small. Not wrong, just tight, like she was wearing a favorite shirt that no longer quite fit her shoulders. She ran her fingers across the edge of a display tray. These pieces, etched with verses, flecked with sunstone and garnet and turquoise, had already begun to travel further than she could drive. A boutique in Vermont had emailed that morning. Another in Oregon had expressed interest. And just like that, her work was no longer limited by her wheels. Still, Opal wasn't sure who she was without the grind of show after show, campfire after campfire. Willow's voice bouncing inside her head like a gospel. Stay small. Stay real. She closed her eyes. She was still real now that she wasn't scraping by. Was this allowed? A knock at the side of her U-Haul startled her. She pulled back the tapestry curtain to find her mom holding a steaming mug of tea. "I figured you needed a reset," she said. "You haven't come inside all day." Opal smiled, accepted the mug, and motioned for her mom to come in. "Still smells like solder and cedar in here," her mom said, settling into a pile of cushions. "You've done a lot with this little box." "It's home," Opal said. But, I don't know. I'm outgrowing it. Not the truck, the story, the way I've been holding myself." Her mom studied her. "Let me guess. Someone called you a sellout?" Opal blinked. "How'd you know?" Her mom smiled. "Because every woman I've ever known who stopped settling got called that." They sat in silence a while. "You're not a sellout, honey," her mom said gently. "You're someone who dared to believe her work was worthy. That's not stepping up or down. That's stepping out of the box people tried to put you in. Everyone deserves things they love. Art, beauty, rest. There's no badge of honor in struggle for struggle's sake." They sat for a while longer, just breathing. "There's no shame in building something different," her mom added, "as long as it's yours." Opal let the words wash over her like rain on the roof. That night, she journaled by candlelight, scribbling out fears she hadn't dared voice aloud. What if I lose my tribe? What if I can't keep this up? What if I become someone I wouldn't have liked 5 years ago? Then in a different color, she wrote, "What if I become someone I needed 5 years ago?" She closed the book and stared at the candle's flickering flame. Later, curled under her quilt, the truck humming around her like an old friend, she thought about Willow. She missed her, even now. Missed the shared silences, the shoulder nudges, the shorthand of sisterhood that forms when two women choose to live outside the lines. But she also knew that Willow wouldn't fit into this new chapter. Opal wasn't better than her. She was just changing, and sometimes people like you the way they found you. The version of you that doesn't contradict them. She reached for a pen, and in tiny letters along the inside of her wrist, drew a wave rising over a mountain. The line was shaky, but the message was clear. Change doesn't mean erasing your past. It means daring to grow beyond it. Chapter 8, Letters and Labels. Opal stared at the blinking cursor like it was a dare. Her laptop sat balanced on a crate, tea gone cold beside it. A tab of her Instagram open, heart counts climbing on a picture of a new necklace captured, rooted and rising. The comments were split like seams. "So proud of you, sis." "Wow, those prizes, though. I miss your old stuff. It felt more you." "This is the real you. Keep shining." Opal exhaled, cracked her knuckles, and opened a blank email. Not a post, not a caption, a letter. Honest, unfiltered. Just her voice. Subject: Why I raise my prices, and why I'm scared, too. I used to think that if I made things affordable, I was being generous. That I was making art for the people, and I still believe in accessibility. I always will, but here's the truth. I was pricing from fear. Fear that people wouldn't love me if my work cost too much. Fear that raising prices meant becoming one of them, the rich, the removed, the not real. But what I've learned, and what I'm still learning, is that we all deserve beauty. Nice things aren't just for the elite, and artisans shouldn't have to burn out to belong. I still have dirt under my nails. I still live in a truck. I still cry when a stranger buys something that means something. I haven't changed. I've just stopped hiding the parts of me that dream bigger. Thank you for growing with me, or even just witnessing. That matters too. Love from the road, Opal. She hit send before she could talk herself out of it, then sat very still. The first reply came 12 minutes later. "Thank you. I've been afraid to raise my prices for years. Your courage gave me a little of mine." Then another. "You made me cry. Not everyone can say that about an email." And then, "I didn't get it before. I do now. But not all were kind. You sound like every other influencer now. Sad to see it. Not sure who you're trying to impress. Guess I'll unfollow." Each message landed with a different weight, but instead of spiraling, Opal did something new. She closed the laptop and went outside. The grass in her mom's backyard was damp from last night's rain. She sat barefoot on the deck, wrapped in an old flannel, watching a crow dig in the garden like it owned the place. Some people would stay, others would go. But the people who understood, the ones who felt what she was saying in their bones, those were her people now. That weekend, she sold out of every new piece at a regional maker's market. People lined up to meet the artist behind the story. A woman in her 60s pulled her aside and said, "You reminded me it's not too late to start something of my own." Opal hugged her like she meant it, because she did. Back in the U-Haul that night's journal entry was just one line. Turns out, when you stop asking for permission, your people know where to find you. Chapter 9, Shiny Rocks and Shadows. It was the rocks that caught her eye first. Polished agate slices in sun-faded bowls, wire-wrapped crystals with slightly crooked bales, a dream catcher made of keys and twine. None of it matched, but it all had the unmistakable hum of something made with hands and love. Opal had just finished setting up at a weekend artisan fair in Duluth when she turned a corner, and there it was, the booth, and behind it, Willow. Opal stopped in her tracks. Same tangled copper dreads, same frayed boots, same scowl of concentration as she adjusted a rack of earrings made from bottle caps and bone. Willow hadn't seen her yet. For a moment, Opal considered turning around. She could loop back through the pottery section and pretend it hadn't happened. Pretend the sting in her chest was just humidity and not unresolved ache. But her feet moved forward. "Hey," she said softly. Willow turned, expression unreadable. There was a pause. Not cold, not warm, just history. "Didn't know you'd be here," Willow said, brushing hair from her face. "Last minute sign up," Opal said. "I didn't think." She trailed off. There was too much to say and none of it felt right. Willow nodded toward her own table. "Still hustling?" Opal gave a half smile. "Always." They stood there, suspended between then and now. "I saw your post," Willow said finally. "The email thing?" Opal waited. "It was good," Willow added. "Too good. Kind of pissed me off." Opal let out a breath that sounded like a laugh. "That tracks." Willow looked down at her hands, fiddling with a strand of hemp cord. You were right, about fear, about boxes. I don't know how to want more without feeling like I'm betraying something. Opal's eyes softened. You're not betraying anything if it's your truth. Staying small doesn't make us more righteous. Just tired. A beat passed. I'm not mad at you, Willow said, almost too quiet to hear. I'm not mad at you either, Opal replied. They didn't hug, they didn't cry, they didn't rehash, but for the first time, they really saw each other. And in that quiet, Opal realized something deeper than anger or grief. She didn't need Willow to approve of her path. She just needed to bless her own. She walked back to her booth under a sky so blue it felt new. Her box truck was parked just beyond the vendor tents, a splash of dusty white and stubborn joy. Inside, she picked up a necklace she'd made earlier in the week, a single labradorite set in hammered gold fill hanging from a strand of silk cord dyed with desert flowers. It was simple, beautiful, not made to prove anything. She added a new tag, handmade by someone who changed her mind and her life. That night, curled up with her journal and a mug of raspberry tea, she didn't write about Willow. She wrote about grace, about how old friends can be mirrors, but also shadows, about how not everyone is meant to walk beside you forever, and how some goodbyes don't need to be dramatic to be sacred. Chapter 10, Reinvented and Rolling. The box truck rumbled down the 2-lane highway, windows down, music floating out into the fields like a flag of freedom. Opal's feet were bare, one leg curled under her, her hair tied up with a strip of dyed silk. A new bracelet glistened on her wrist, one she'd made just for herself. The inside read, "The map is inside you." The road unfurled before her like a promise. She didn't know exactly where she was going next. Maybe Vermont, maybe Oregon, maybe somewhere she hadn't even thought of yet. But for the first time, she didn't need a perfect plan because she wasn't running anymore. She was expanding. The U-Haul changed in small but important ways. A new folding bench replaced her old milk crates. Jewelry tools now lived in custom drawers instead of cigar boxes. There were postcards from boutique buyers tacked on the walls next to hand-drawn sketches and old Polaroids from Baja. Her truck hadn't lost its soul. It had just gained new dimension. Kind of like her. She pulled into a scenic overlook near the Mississippi River just before sunset. The sky stretched wide in streaks of orange and lavender, and the water below shimmered like polished tourmaline. She hopped out, walked to the edge, and breathed in deeply, like her ribs needed more room to hold the moment. From her pocket, she pulled a small stack of letters, notes from customers, fellow artists, women who'd replied to her email or messaged her with stories of their own pivots. One was from a retired teacher who'd started painting again. Another from a single mom who'd raised her consulting rates after reading Opal's post. One simply read, "I didn't know I could want more until you said it out loud." Opal pressed the stack to her heart. They were reminders, not just of who she was, but of who she helped others remember they could be. Back in the truck, she lit a candle, set out her sketch pad, and turned on a playlist she'd titled Becoming. She didn't need a million customers, just the right ones. She didn't need to be understood by everyone, just by herself. She didn't need to keep proving that she was real. She was real when she was making $20 rings. She was real when she raised her prices. She was real when she doubted it all. She was real right now. Outside, the sun finally slipped below the horizon. Opal walked to the back of the truck, sat on the edge, legs swinging in the cool evening air. She thought about Willow, not with anger, not even with ache, just recognition. Some people stay in the same story their whole lives. Others rewrite the ending. Opal chose the rewrite. As the stars blinked awake, she whispered something into the wind, half prayer, half declaration. I get to grow. I get to change. I get to want. Then she climbed into her truck, turned the key, and smiled as the engine roared back to life. She wasn't trying to change the person she had become. She was honoring her. And now she was rolling forward with no ceiling, no box, and no apologies.